विश्वंदर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतम् पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यम् तन्तोटकं वातिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ I welcome you all to the 22nd class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. Is my video clearly visible to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
So, how does an adhikari become an adhikari? This is the question we have been focusing on. We said that in order to answer these questions, there are three sub-questions we have to answer. How does the adhikari become a mumukshuhu, a seeker of moksha, or a direct seeker of this purnatvam? How does the adhikari then become a jigyasuhu, someone who sees this indispensable connection between the study of Vedanta and the benefit, which is this purnatvam? The third is, how does the adhikari gain certain qualifications of the mind that are required for this benefit to be gained? How does the adhikari become a mumukshuhu? He said that the adhikari becomes a mumukshuhu by discovering the problem of samsara. Balaji and Prasanna, I'm not able to see you clearly because I think the camera is kind of somewhere in between. You can do some adjustment, that's nice. And if somebody else, one more person can turn on their camera, that would also help me.
Is this better?
Yeah, this is better. Yeah.
Thank you. No.
So by discovering the problem of samsara, the adhikari gains this mumukshutvam. How so? By discovering that the struggle to gain this purnatvam through the first three purusharthas, dharmaha, arthaha and kamaha, that is never ending, that can never lead me to this purnatvam. And this person who is a karma yogi, he discovers that all the accomplishments in the first three purusharthas are riddled with three doshas, dukkha mishritatvam, atriptikaratvam and bandhakatvam. Mixed with sorrow, they leave me apurnaha and they leave me dependent on things that are inherently unsustainable, uncontrollable, and unpredictable. Then this person begins to question, how do I gain this purnatvam if not through the first three purusharthas? And at that point, the Veda Purva tells him that what you are now seeking is this purnatvam directly, because you have realized the limitations of the first three purusharthas, and therefore now you need to approach Vedanta. So this person then becomes a mumukshuhu who approaches Vedanta. And how does this person become a jigyasuhu? When he comes to Vedanta, Vedanta tells him that your real nature is the purnatvam that you are seeking. Problem is that you are ignorant of your own nature, just as the 10th man was already the 10th man. But because he was ignorant of being the 10th man, he was seeking the 10th man. So similarly, your seeking this purnatvam is as absurd as the 10th man seeking the 10th man. The root cause of this is your own ignorance. And when one comes to know this, then one becomes a seeker of knowledge. The samanya jnanam that I am is there. But the vishesha jnanam of who I am is not there. And in this case, this is the ideal condition for a mistake, a superimposition. And therefore, I invariably end up mistaking who I am. I superimpose the limitations of the body and the mind upon this I am that I don't know. Just as I mistake a rope for a snake. And then, having taken myself to be apurnaha, I struggle to get rid of this apurnatvam, to gain purnatvam in the field of artha, kama, and dharma. But this is a never-ending process because none of my accomplishments in artha, kama, or dharma, they address my root self-ignorance. Therefore, the self-ignorance remains intact. The superimposition that I am apurnaha continues to remain intact no matter how much I accomplish. This is samsaraha, chasing artha, kama, and dharma, but then still remaining apurnaha. It's like a deer or some animal in a desert that chases a mirage but remains thirsty. It's like that broomstick. No matter how much you decorate the broomstick remains a broomstick, a highly decorated broomstick, but the broomstick doesn't change. Similarly, no matter how much I accomplish in artha, kama, and dharma, I remain apurna, a highly decorated apurna person. When one sees this, one then sees clearly that the root cause of all of my struggles is the lack of my knowledge of myself, is ignorance. One becomes a jigyasuhu, a seeker of knowledge. But even after one comes to this point, there are several questions. What is this knowledge? What is the means to gain this knowledge that are not answered? Therefore, we got into an inquiry into pramanas. What are the means of knowledge? And since the Atma is the subject, it is never an object. Drik versus Drishyam, we saw all this in detail. Because of this, we had to dismiss all the Laukika Pramanas, all the Laukika means of knowledge, including Laukika Shabdas, as incapable of revealing the nature of the Atma. And then we came to the Vedika Shabdas. The Vedika Shabdas are different because the Shabdas themselves reveal that, are the means of knowledge for that which cannot be gained through the Laukika Pramanas. प्रत्यक्षेनानुमित्या वा यस्तु पायो न बुध्यते एनं विदन्ति वेदेन तस्मात् वेदस्य वेदता. And then we having arrived at the Vedika Shabdas, we specifically came to Vedanta. Vedanto nama Upanishad Pramanam. That the words of Vedanta, the Shabdas of Vedanta are the Pramana that reveal the nature of the Atma. Now this Jigyasuhu has now come to this point where the Jigyasu who identifies the pramana that can give rise to the Atmajnanam. Now, how is this pramana to be employed? It is employed during Shravanam. Consistent and systematic study of Vedanta for a length of time under a competent Acharya. This is Shravanam. And when this Shravanam is done, the Acharya does an inquiry into the meanings of the sentences of Vedanta. When the Acharya does this inquiry, then the same inquiry happens in the mind of the student also. And when this inquiry is done, then one understands what the sentences of Vedanta are revealing. And this process, over a length of time, we say, gives rise to Atmajnanam. So now this person is a mumukshu. This person is a Jignasuhu who knows that moksha is eka sadhana sadhyam, meaning that the sadhana for moksha is jnanam. This person is now an informed Jignasu who knows that this jnanam is also eka sadhana sadhyam and the sadhana is pramanam. This Vedanta pramana employed during Shravanam is a means for this knowledge. So all of this is very clear now for this adhikari. But then now we come to the third question, that certain qualifications are needed. We say for the rise of the Atmajnanam, the adhikari also needs to have certain qualifications. In fact, the coming together of these three conditions is what makes an adhikari an adhikari. So then, why these qualifications? We look at it. We took the example of the eyes. The eyes are the pramana for me to gain knowledge of colors in this world. Now, when the eyes have some cataract, then the appropriate pramana is there, but the appropriate pramana is not operating adequately. And in such cases, the color knowledge does not arise properly. So similarly, for the Vedanta pramana to operate adequately, Vedanta is the appropriate pramana. For the appropriate pramana, that is Vedanta, to operate adequately during Shravanam, there has to be freedom from certain obstacles in the mind of the listener, of the sadhaka. So this freedom from obstacles is basically what we are calling qualifications. So we saw what the obstacles are, malaha and vikshepaha. Malaha refers to papam. Papam that makes the mind go after sense objects. Papam that makes the mind do some nishiddha karmas. That is malaha. Vikshepaha is preoccupation of the mind. So when these reduce, the qualifications increase. The question is, what are these qualifications? So we came to sadhana chatushtaya sampattihi. These four qualifications. Sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. Sadhana chatushtayam kim. These are the exact words in Tattva Bodha. Nitya nitya vastu vivekah, ihamutrartha phala bhoga viragah, Shama षट्क sampattihi, mumukshutvam cheti. The four qualifications are given. Vivekaha, Vairagyam, Shatka Sampattihi, Mumukshutvam. And then we started to look into each of these qualifications. What is Vivekaha? Said that Vivekaha is the ability to separate things when they are mixed up, the ability to discern what is what. We took the example of the diamond merchant who has got the mixture of diamonds, fake and real diamonds. So this diamond merchants take each diamond and examines it closely. He says, this is real. He examines it, this is fake. So he is doing vivekaha. He is employing his vivekaha shakti at that point. The ability to discern from a mixture. So what is the mixture that we are talking about here? Said it is nitya vastu vivekaha. And in this entire world, that is present before us, including this body, mind. We include everything in the world. We say there is a mixture of the Nitya Vastu and the Anitya Vastu. All are mixed up together. But the Anitya Vastus are those that are perishable. The Nitya Vastu is that which is imperishable. So when we look at this world, everything is in space and time and is constantly under onslaught by time. So whatever is created in time departs in time. Whatever is produced disappears one day. Everything that has a date of production has an expiry date. So then when everything is coming and going, it is not a good idea for me to lean for my peace, security, and happiness upon that which is anitya, perishable. It is wiser for one to lean on that which is imperishable for my peace, security, and happiness. We took the example of the bus ride where everybody is standing. When the bus turns left, you hit your head on the right. When the bus turns right, you hit your head on the left. Now imagine such a person saying that I need some support, therefore I will get a stool to the bus. And he sits on the stool in this bus. The stool itself is not stable. This person is leaning on something which is unstable for his security. Very bad idea. Because the stool gets moved all around when disturbances happen. Therefore, one has to hold on to this, which is hanging from the top, which is firmly attached to the top, and that is attached to the bus firmly. So when you hold on to something that is firm, and that gives you that security that you need. So essentially, this person understands that there is the Nitya Vastu. Every Anitya Vastu has a Nitya Adhishthanam. There has to be something that is Nitya. In the world of clay pots, clay is Nitya. In the world of gold ornaments, gold is Nitya. This is the inviolable law. That every Anitya Vastu has to have a Nitya Adhishthanam. Similarly, the entire world is Anitya, but it too should have a Nitya Adhishthanam. I don't know what it is. At this point, I am just an adhikari. But if one has Viveka, one knows that there is the Nitya Vastu, there has to be one, and Vedanta is confirming that. And therefore, I have to discriminate and come to know this. So that this is Viveka. And what is the consequence of Viveka? He said it is Vairagyam. When one understands that what I am trying to lean on for my peace, security, and happiness, in my attempt to get Purnatvam, when one understands it is Anitya, then one withdraws from it. Just like when one understands that leaning on the stool is not a good idea, then one gives up the stool and looks for something else. So similarly, one sees that trying to emotionally depend on, trying to lean on something, trying to long for this, that is anitya, is not a very wise thing to do. Therefore, one gets this vairagya. What does this mean? And then a person who has vairagya, he decides that these things that are anitya cannot be the top priority of my life anymore. Because that would not be a wise life to lead. That doesn't make sense. Once one knows something is anitya, then trying to make that the top priority of your life, trying to make my life, arrange my life around the pursuit of something that is anitya, does it really make sense? Is the question one has to ask oneself. Then, basically, one withdraws from the passionate pursuit of this, from the longing for this, from the dependence on it, emotional dependence. One one withdraws from that. So in a person who has vairagya, the absence of longing, emotional dependence, and absence of a high priority or the pursuit of the anitya vastus. Pariksha lokan karmachitan. Having examined the experiences that are karmachitan, gained through karma. What experiences are gained through karma? Artha, kama and dharma. Having examined what artha, kama and dharma can give me, having seen that what it gives me is anitya and nirvedamaya. Why? Nasti akrita kritena. What I am seeking for, this purnatvam, these cannot give me. Because they are anitya, they can only give me anitya sukham. What I am after is nitya sukham. So the nitya sukham is not there. Nasti akrita kritena. By this world, which can be accomplished through action, through effort, I cannot gain this nitya sukham that I am seeking. And therefore, nirvedamaya means one gains dispassion towards artha, kama, and dharma. We see that vivekaha is the root qualification that gives rise to vairagya. Nirvedamayat, pariksha lokan karmachitan, nirvedamayat. So vairagya is a consequence of this viveka. And mumukshutvam is also a consequence because tad vijnanartham sa gurumeva bhigachet samitpanihi. In order to gain that which is nitya, one should go to a guru. This also one now understands. So vivekaha gives rise to mumukshutvam and to vairagyam and to samadhi shatka sampatti also, because once one understands that that is what my pursuit is, then I will try to gain the disciplines that are necessary for my pursuit to be successful. So this is vairagyam. We said objectivity. Vairagyam is also objectivity. Objectivity meaning less subjectivity. I see things as they are, more or less. I don't impose a subjective value upon it. What is an example of subjective value? Like money gives security. Money can solve my problem of insecurity. Other objects of the world can give me happiness. Other relationships of the world can give me happiness and security. All of these are subjective values. We took the example of the object. Can an object give happiness? If the object inherently had something called happiness, then the object should give happiness uniformly to everybody. But the Parikai Sambhar doesn't give happiness uniformly to everybody, only to some. The female snake gives happiness. The male snake is happy on the sighting of the female snake. But when somebody else sees it, he runs away from it. If the object inherently had happiness, it should uniformly give happiness to everybody. If the object inherently had happiness, it should uniformly give happiness to the same person as long as the person is in possession of the object. But then what happens is after a while, there is diminishing returns from that object. One boredom sets in and the person starts to seek something else. So we took the example of the dog chewing on a bone. The bone is bone dry. It has nothing. But the dog chews on the bone and the bone cuts its own mouth. And then that releases some blood in its mouth and the dog then sucks its own blood and it attributes it to the bone. Where is that taste coming from? From within the dog itself, from its mouth. So this is what is happening when people misattribute happiness to objects. When the object of desire is obtained, at that point the mind has a certain freedom from desire. The mind attains a certain poise. It is not hankering after anything in those instances of obtaining the object of desire. And in that sattvic mind, one's own Atmananda is reflected. Where is the happiness coming from? If it is not in the object, it has to come from the subject. There are only two things, the subject and the object. So when one understands that the spring of this happiness is me, myself, that the source of this happiness is me, myself, and all I'm doing is I'm just rearranging the world in some ways. And the rearrangement of this world is just incidental. It is not a producer of happiness. The incidental rearrangement of the world, which is temporary, makes my own happiness manifest in my mind. But this rearrangement of the world is temporary because everything is anitya. That situation will change. And when that situation changes, it stops to manifest the happiness in my mind. The happiness whose source I am, it is no longer manifested in the mind. So when one sees this, and one understands that whatever is in the world, nothing is really giving me happiness. It is coming from within myself, from me. Then what is the point in passionately pursuing this? I'd rather direct my pursuit to the source of the happiness, which is me, myself. Understanding this is vairagyam. We said that vairagyam is also the absence of these binding ragas and dveshas. If I have a strong like or dislike for objects, then what happens? The mind is constantly hankering after the object of like or constantly worrying about the object of dislike. So the object of like, my like, the object of ragaha binds me by its absence. When the object is absent, then I feel incomplete. I am constantly longing for it. Whereas the object of dveshaha, the object of my hate, if it is present, then I'm constantly worrying about how to get rid of it. So both the ragaha and dveshaha, objects of ragaha and dveshaha bind me. In a mind that has such binding ragas and dveshas is constantly disturbed. Such a mind is not available for study and contemplation. And therefore, a mind that has vairagya has freedom from has neutralized these likes and dislikes, strong likes and dislikes. They become preferences in a mind that has vairagya. Preferences meaning if the object of my like is there, fine, wonderful. The object of my liking is not there, okay. If the object of my dislike is present, fine. If the object of my dislike is absent, wonderful. But either way, the mind is not disturbed. This is absence of binding ragas and dveshas. Then we saw that vairagyam is the preparedness of mind to lose everything that is losable. What is losable? Everything is losable. One day, either it has to go because it is anitya, or one day I have to leave because the body mind is anitya. So either way, the separation has to happen one day. Everything that is losable, the preparedness to lose that is vairagyam. In this, there are two recognitions. One is everything is losable. The second is that's a bad idea to lean on anything that is losable. Then what should I lean on? I should lean on that can never be lost. And what is it that can never be lost? It is the Nitya Vastu. So, preparedness to lose everything that is losable is an indication, is a mark of Vairagyam. So now let us go to the next qualification. It is Shamadhi Shatka Sampattihi. So I had prepared this PDF file. I think I did not send it on WhatsApp before the class. Let me just send that so that you can look at it. Just one moment. So I just sent it on WhatsApp, and that has a few more extracts from Tattvabodha. So are you able to see it?
Not yet.
Okay.
It to come. Yeah, it has come.
Okay. Yeah, you can open it and look at the Tattvabodha number 1.3. So are you able to open it?
Yeah.
Okay. So Tattvabodha number 1.3. So I will read this, and it gives the, it introduces Samadhi, Shatka Sampattihi. In fact, it is called Samadhi Sadhana Sampattihi here. But if you see earlier in the same text, it was called Samadhi Shatka Sampattihi, and both are equivalent. I will read this. Number 1.3. Samadhi Sadhana Sampatti Ka Shamodama Uparama Titiksha Shraddha Samadhanam Cha Iti. This defines Samadhi Sadhana Sampattihi. The student is asking, what is this Samadhi Sadhana Sampattihi? And the Guru is replying, Shamaha, Damaha, Uparamaha, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhanam Cha Iti. So there are 6 things involved here. That is why there is a list of 6 given. Shamaha, Damaha, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhanam. Shamaha, Damaha, Uparamaha, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhanam Cha Iti. What does this Sampattihi mean? So Sampattihi means wealth. So when we think about wealth, we normally think about money or gold, real estate, and all of these external wealth is what comes to our mind. But then those are indicative of material growth in some ways, material growth. But what we are talking about here is inner growth, the person's inner growth. Inner wealth, that's why it's called inner wealth, inner maturity. And that's why the word sampattihi is used. And what sampattihi are we talking about here? Samadhi sadhana sampattihi. Shama adi sadhana sampattihi. So the list of things that begins with Shama, list of qualifications that begins with Shama, Shama adi. And it's a sadhana sadhana. Samadhi sadhana sampattihi. It is a sadhanam because all of this are helpful in the rise of knowledge. What are each of these? Let us look at that. So let us look at the next one, which is 1.3.1 in the PDF that I had sent. Shamakaha Mano Nigraha. Shamaha Kaha. What is Shama? The Guru says, Mano Nigraha. Mano Nigraha is a samasaha, meaning a compound word that joins two words, Manas and Nigraha. What is Nigraha? Nigraha. Nigraha means discipline, restraint, management. Discipline, restraint, management of what? Manaha, the mind, thoughts. So this is not just something that is important in the spiritual pursuit, but even for worldly accomplishments, to accomplish something significant in the world, to accomplish excellence in some aspect of a worldly pursuit also, one needs the mental discipline. So this is a lot of these things that come under Samadhi, Shatka, Sampatti, they're all commonsensical things. Many of them are things that we can figure out even from excellence in worldly pursuits. What is required? Similar things are required. A person who doesn't have this thought discipline, mind discipline, it's very difficult for the person to accomplish something significant even in the world. So nigraha, manasaha nigraha, mano nigraha. So what is this discipline of the mind? See, there's often this talk about destruction of the mind, etc. We don't use that language because, as we saw, ahara nidra bhayamaithunancha samanam pashubhir naranam buddhir hi tesham adhiko visheshaha buddhir vihinaha pashubhis samanaha. So this buddhi is a very unique and a very sophisticated and an advanced instrument the human being has. So without this buddhi, the human being is as good as animals. Buddhya vihinaha pashubhis samana. Pujya Swamiji says, in fact, without this mind, which is this wonderful instrument that a human being has, the human being may even be worse off compared to animals. Because animals like dogs have a wonderful sense of smell, which a human being cannot match. Or bats, etc., they have the ability to fly so fast in such a difficult terrain because of this ability to emit waves. A human being cannot do this. So without this buddhi, a human being would be much worse off compared to many of the animals. The buddhi is what distinguishes the human being from the animal. It's a wonderful instrument that is capable of this fine thinking. And it has to respond to a variety of situations. So the mind has got both involuntary thoughts and voluntary thoughts. The involuntary thoughts are also very important because if there is something that is flying towards me, then I have to process that information. The mind processes that information quickly and ducks. All of this happens instinctively without my control, explicit control. So this is a very important ability the mind has, that to have involuntary thoughts. But the mind can also have voluntary thoughts where I will the mind in a particular direction. So both are important aspects of the mind. So the involuntary thoughts can be divided into two. There are world-based, world-generated involuntary thoughts. And there are vasana-generated involuntary thoughts. The involuntary thoughts in my mind can have two sources, the world or my own vasanas. Vasanas means my own past impressions, my own habits. For example, if I'm walking on a road and I see an ice cream shop, and that raises this thought, I want to have some ice cream. So this is an example of a world-generated involuntary thought. I never had this will to eat ice cream. This this idea of this sighting of this ice cream shop is the first involuntary thought that led to the second thought that followed that. How about an ice cream? Now, let's take the other example where somebody gets up in the morning, brushes, and then the mind starts to say coffee, 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 newspaper, newspaper. So this person has, over a very long period of time, done this sadhana of coffee and newspaper. He has cultivated this habit of coffee and newspaper. How? Through a very prolonged sadhana in which he has done this coffee and newspaper together for the last 45 years. So he has developed this vasana, and that is now pushing the mind. Coffee, coffee, coffee. So this is an example of a vasana-based involuntary thought. It is no longer in his control to he did not initiate this. It happened through his vasanas, through his habits. These are the two types of involuntary thoughts. And let us say, now let's come to the voluntary thoughts. So if there's a certain project I need to work on, and I say that this is an important project, I have this deadline. At that point, I invoke a certain focus in my mind that I should think about this. I shut myself off from other things. And then I then sequentially think about what needs to be done. So this is voluntary thinking. Or I say, I want to sit down and do some japa for the next 20 minutes. I take the mantra and my mind, I am trying to focus solely on that mantra. That mantra is generated voluntarily by me. The thought of that mantra is generated in my mind. This is an example of voluntary thinking. So what is this mano nigraha? What is this discipline, restraint, management of the mind? Basically, it is discipline, restraint, management of thoughts. Because the mind is just thoughts. So when I have to work on something, the ability to ask the involuntary thoughts to vacate the mind so that I can focus on my voluntary thoughts. This ability is mano nigraha. Why is this important? Because let's take this example that I have a house and I am moving to another city for 2 years, and therefore I rent out this house to the tenant. The tenant is living there. Now, after 2 years, I plan to return to my hometown. I ask the tenant to vacate. Let us say the tenant does not vacate. So now the tenant has occupied the house. The tenant has occupied the house is not available for me. So similarly, if the involuntary thoughts, whether they be world generated or vasana generated, if they start to occupy my mind and don't leave the mind when I want it to, then the mind is not available for my voluntary thinking, for my voluntary thoughts. So then such a mind will not be able to accomplish what it wants to do. So let's see, take this example that let us say one goes and has an argument with somebody. An argument. And then this argument has now entered the mind. You can take it to be a world-generated involuntary thought. And then one is constantly now dwelling on it, saying that I should have retaliated in this way, or that person said this to me, and so on. So this is now occupying the mind. Now let us picture such a person sitting in a Vedanta class. Why even Vedanta? If that person wants to do some project at work, he may be staring at the screen, he may be reading some journal or some research paper. But those words, they just are black prints that appear in front of the eyes. The whole mind has been taken over. He's not able to focus what he wants to, on what he wants to. So another example is, let us say your laptop, it has got some malware or spyware running in it. And then you look at you try to move your mouse and open your Excel spreadsheet. And you can't even move your mouse because the CPU is busy, the processor is busy processing something the malware is doing or the spyware is. So the laptop is not available for your use. So similarly, the cycles of the mind are being taken up by something else, that then the cycles of the mind are not available for what I want to work on. The involuntary thinking has taken over the mind. So I may have physical time allotted to do certain work, but the mental time is not available. So the ability to get the mental time when I want to, for what I want to work on, this ability is Shama. So Swamiji calls this thought displacement skill. I need a certain thought displacement skill, that I ask whatever is there in my mind to vacate so that I want to focus on something. That is why japa, etc., becomes an important sadhana, because if I'm alert during my japa, then I can see that is my mind really working on what I have asked it to work on. When one starts with japa, and then within the first 30 seconds or 1 minute, the thought of what I have to do next arises. After the japa, what I have to do, I have to meet somebody else, for example. So one has to repeatedly bring the mind back. One has to repeatedly bring the mind back to the task at hand. So the more shamaha one has, then what it means is that you ask the mind to do something, the mind is available in order to do that. So instead of random thoughts based on the world or vasanas occupying my mind, being able to vacate them and being able to think in the direction I want to think in order to accomplish the goal that I want to accomplish. This ability is very important. And as we said, this ability is important not just in the spiritual path, even for the material accomplishments. Very important ability. For example, if you look at some of these chess players, etc., when they focus, they are able to direct their mind to the game. They have to think about 4 or 5 moves in advance. If I move this, that person will move that. If or that person may move that. If he moves this, I may move this. If he moves that, I may move this. He has to analyze that game. For such a thing, his mind has to be available. If he is thinking about the argument that he had with somebody yesterday, then his game is not going to be going to produce what his true potential is. So bottom line, why we are discussing this in the spiritual context is that I have to be able to channelize my mind into Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Because Shravanam requires alert listening. Because the teacher is going to make some fine points. The teacher is going to draw my attention to the Atma. And it's a very subtle subject matter. If the mind is not available, then all of these words will just bounce off my ears. And even after the Shravanam, the mind has to be available, because one has to be able to dwell on what one has listened on and see whether whether one is able to relate to it, whether there is anything that doesn't make sense. One has to be able to formulate doubts properly and then get clarification for those doubts. So all of this requires a mind that is available. That is why Pujya Swamiji says that your mind is available when you want to sit to listen. The mind is available when Shamaha is there. If the mind is available when one wants to contemplate, Shama is there. If the mind is available when one wants to study, this person has Shama. So this is Shama. So now let us come to the next qualification, which is Damaha. So I will read it. This is Tattvabodha 132. The student is asking, Damaha kaha or Damah kaha Chakshuradibahyendriya nigraha. So what is Damaha? This, the Guru responds, Chakshuradi Bahyendriya Nigraha. So again, a compound word, Tamasaha. Chakshuhu Adi Bahya Indriya Nigraha. So here, there are 5 words compounded together. So this is the beauty of the Sanskrit language also, that you will not find a dictionary that it's a single word, right? This entire thing is a single word, a compound word, but you will not find a dictionary that has such a word because it's formed by a combination of these basic words. And therefore, one has the ability to form new words in Sanskrit by combining words. This is the beauty of the language. So this is a samasaha here, a long samasa. So let us analyze what this is saying. Again, nigraha. Nigraha means discipline, management, restraint. So this time, discipline, management, restraint of what? Chakshuhu, adi, bahya, indriya. Indriya nigraha means sense organs, discipline, management, restraint of sense organs like my eyes, etc. Chakshuhu adi bahya indriya nigraha. So this is my seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. The world, as we saw earlier, Shabdaha, Sparshaha, Rupaha, Rasaha, and Gandhaha. This is what the world is. Without this, we cannot talk about the world. How does this Shabdaha, Sparshaha, Rupaha, Rasaha, and Gandhaha enter my mind? The gateways for their entry are my sense organs. Seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. So why should there be a restraint or discipline management of the sense organs? We talked about the mind having 2 kinds of involuntary thoughts, world generated and vasana generated. So there is a need to discipline the sense organs in order to avoid problematic world generated involuntary thoughts. There are certain involuntary world generated thoughts that can be problematic. And therefore, I have to exercise a certain discipline of the sense organ to not contact that part of the world because it is not going to be productive for the pursuit that I really want to focus on. Why? Because if the world uncontrollably enters my mind, if all parts of the world uncontrollably enter my mind, then what happens? A lot of the thoughts, they come and go. For example, even as I rotate my head, there are tens of involuntary thoughts that enter my mind, and they leave. They're not really problematic. But then, as we discussed sometime earlier, if a person applies glue on oneself and then walks all around, let us say, then some things tend to stick to this person. Similarly, the mind also has a gluey tendency, a tendency to stick to some things. And then what happens is some things enter the mind, but they don't leave that easily. And then the mind continues to dwell on it because the thing has now entered and it is not leaving the mind. So if there are areas of the world that have the ability to create a certain temptation or a certain provocation or some kind of disturbance, then it is best to avoid sensory contact with those parts of the world. Or if a certain part of the world can be addictive, once something enters, then it creates a longing for more of it. Just like smoking or drinking, or even perhaps, a modern example might be like watching some OTT, serial. They create the serials in such a way that once you come to the end of it, you want to watch the next one. And this can get you hooked. And then you watch series after seasons of it. So basically, some entertainment is fine, but if it starts to enter the mind and then it starts to take up valuable time, then that is something one has to look at. So this ability to manage the senses is Dama. So my final aim is to entertain more of voluntary thoughts in my mind that are centered around my primary focus, which is Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasana. And for me to do that, first I have to exercise my restraint on my senses to not contact problematic parts of the world. And then I have to ask the involuntary thoughts to vacate and then cultivate the voluntary thoughts that allow me to do Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasana. Bottom line is the disciplining of the sense organs and the mind so that I can channelize the mind into Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasana. Shamaha and Damaha. Then the next qualification is in that list. The next qualification is mentioned as Uparamaha. I'll skip that today and we'll go to Titiksha. We'll take up Uparamaha in the next class. So let us look at this. 134 of Tattva Bodha. 134. Titiksha ka शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखादि सहिष्णुत्वम्. तितिक्षा का शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखादि sahishnutvam. So if you notice earlier it was Shamah kaha, Damah kaha. Here it is Titiksha ka. So why not kaha here? Because Titiksha is Strilingam, is feminine gender. Titiksha. Therefore, Titiksha ka. What is Titiksha? The student is asking. The Guru responds, Shitoshna Sukha Dukkhadi Sahishnutvam. Again, a samasa, compound word. Sahishnutvam. Sahishnutvam means ability to withstand something. Withstand what? Shita means cold. Ushnaha means heat, cold heat. Sukha, Sukham is pleasant situations. Dukkham, unpleasant situations. So, ability to withstand these opposites. Life is composed of various opposites. Heat, cold, pleasure, pain, happiness, sorrow, win, loss, profit, loss, mana, apmana, mana, apamana. Mana means somebody respects you, apamana means somebody insults you. So when these opposites, when they come and go, the ability to withstand that, the ability to go through that with without too much complaint, too much fussing, etc. That is Titiksha. So we see when we people who are in engineering, we will know that there is something known as stress testing in engineering. When a product is brought out, then there is a certain amount of testing that needs to be done to see if that product can withstand all kinds of difficult situations. So, for example, if somebody is manufacturing a phone, they may put it under water to see if it can withstand that, or they may put it in a hot place or in a very cold place, or they may drop it on the floor, right? Make it go through these difficult situations, and only if it is able to still function properly, then they will pass the product in the quality control. Or if the spacecraft has to enter the atmosphere, right, then the outer shield of this has to withstand very hot temperatures. So they have to design it in such a way that they choose metals that can withstand that temperature, and it has to successfully transition through that period. So similarly, we say that the adhikari has to have this mental ability to withstand difficult situations. There is a verse in the Gita that is relevant here, which also is present in the extracts, which comes next. So here through too, Krishna talks about Titiksha to Arjuna. He says, Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha agama paino nityaha tam titikshasva bharata. So he says, Hey Kaunteya, Arjuna, Matra sparshastu shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha. Matra sparshaha tu shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha agama painaha anityaha tan titikshasva bharata. So here Krishna is talking about matra sparshaha, meaning sense organs and sense objects. Matra sparshaha means sense organs and sense objects. So Krishna says, Shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha. They give rise to cold, the feeling of cold, the feeling of heat, pleasure, pain, etc. Shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha. They give rise to all these pairs of opposites. But Krishna says, Agama painaha, meaning they come and they go. No such thing is permanently there. Why? Because they are anityaha. Agama painaha anityaha. And Krishna says, Tan titikshasva. Titikshasva. That is what we are discussing here. Titikshasva means, may you endure them. Tan titikshasva bharata. Oh Bharata, may you endure them. May you withstand them. So the life is all about contact of the sense organs with the sense objects. This contact will produce all kinds of opposites. It will produce heat, cold, pleasure, pain, profit, loss, whatever. All that is bound to happen. They come and go. Nothing is permanent. So one should learn to withstand them. That is what Krishna is talking about here. This is Titiksha. The Viveka Chudamani gives a slightly different definition of Titiksha that comes next in the PDF file. So we will read that. So this is Viveka Chudamani, verse number 24. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam chinta vilaparahitam satitiksha nigadyate. So the interesting thing is that all the different texts of Vedanta, introductory texts of Vedanta, they are very consistent about these qualifications, sadhana chatushtaya sampattihi, and what this what the four high level qualifications are, and even within shatka sampattihi, what the six sub qualifications are. The texts are quite consistent about it. So you'll find similar things, subject matter being discussed in various texts of Vedanta. So generally, when the teacher is teaching one text of Vedanta, you just focus on that text. But since this is a fundamentals Vedanta class in which we are not sticking to one text, we have the freedom to pull this information from multiple sources and discuss them. So here is the Titiksha as defined in Viveka Chudamanihi. So what does it say here? Sa Titiksha Nigadyate. So this is called Titiksha, he says. So what is called Titiksha? Sahanam Sarva Dukkhana. Sahanam. Again, Sahishnutvam there. Shitoshna Sukha Dukkhadi Sahishnutvam. Here, Sahanam. Sahanam means withstanding, ability to withstand Sarva Dukkhanam. What? Ability to withstand all kinds of sorrow. See, the ultimate ability to withstand all kinds of sorrow comes through jnanam. So this person is still an adhikari. He doesn't have the ultimate ability to withstand all kinds of sorrow that a jnani has. But here, there's a certain posturing of the mind, a certain understanding that brings about this, which is not the absolute understanding of a jnani, but this is the titiksha of an adhikari that we are talking about. So here he gives three conditions. Apratikara purvakam, meaning pratikara. Pratikara means seeking remedy. So apratikara purvakam means not seeking remedy. So for every little thing, oh, it is a little too hot today, let me put on the AC, right? Or it is very cold. It's a bit colder than normal. Let me put on a few blankets, right? So if it is a few things here and there, then one can try to extend one's limits of tolerance rather than immediately resorting to a remedy. We are not saying don't seek a remedy at all. In case you are finding it difficult, certainly do it. But there may be situations in which a remedy is not available. So, and such situations will invariably come in life. We call them choiceless situations where there is no remedy available and one has to go through this. So that means one has to train oneself in order to not seek any remedy under situations that one can relatively handle. At least try not to seek a remedy in such situations. Apratikara purvaka. And what is the next condition? Chinta vilapa rahitam. Basically two conditions. Chinta rahitam and vilapa rahitam. Meaning without undue worry. Don't worry too much about it. Don't make a fuss about it. Without making a fuss, without constant botheration, etc. One goes through it. One goes through these pairs of opposites. Chinta rahitam, and then vilapa rahitam, without constant lamentation, without constant complaint, without phoning people and telling them, oh, it is like this today, it is too hot today, it's too hot today, etc. Right? Just silently going through such situations. Titiksha. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam, without seeking remedy for situations that one can relatively handle. Chinta rahitam, without constant botheration. Vilapa rahitam, without constant complaint, lamentation, etc. This is titiksha. So titiksha converts pain into tapas. So when one decides to employ titiksha in a particular situation, it converts pain into tapas. We don't have to think about, that tapas can only be done after going into a forest or something. Even in day-to-day situations, one can find some opportunity for tapas. Oh, it's a little uncomfortable. I will handle this without seeking a remedy for this, without complaint, without constantly fussing about it. This then becomes tapas. It becomes a spiritual sadhana in itself. And even some sickness, etc., can be an opportunity to convert that pain into tapas through titiksha, by silently going through. And Swamiji says that grihastha ashrama is an ashrama wherein one can develop this titiksha. Because there are a lot of things that may not go in the way one expects it to go. And in such a situation, one can try to develop some titiksha, going through it silently, going through that pain, whatever pain has arisen, going through it silently. There may be mana, there may be respect, there may be apamana, there may be insult. Going through both without too much fluctuation in the mind, going through it with endurance. So this endurance is titiksha. And as we said, life will invariably bring situations that are choiceless, where there is no remedy available. No remedy is available. For example, there may be a particular issue with a certain family member, and one has to live with that person. One cannot switch members of the family. So one develops a certain titiksha. A person who has titiksha can tide over situations that invariably that will have ups and downs. See, there is all this increase of divorces in the world today, and a lot of it is because marriage will invariably have these ups and downs. But then, if one makes a big fuss about the down periods, then that leads to instability. Whereas if one has a certain amount of titiksha that this too will pass, this is a temporary phase also, this is a difficult situation, but we will tide over it. If one has that titiksha, then one can tide over such situations. So that drop of the hat, one doesn't say, that this relationship is not something for me. So if one has titiksha, then one begins to look at it as one's own karma phala. That every situation, difficult situation that comes in my life is there is my own karma that is also responsible for it. And if one is a karma yogi, one looks at it as Ishvara's prasada. That for some reason Ishvara has placed me in this situation, let me use it for my own growth. This difficult situation is going to make me a stronger person. If one has such an attitude with titiksha, then it leads to one's own inner growth, being in the same situation, not trying to get rid of the situation at the drop of a hat. So this can lead to one's own growth. So basically, one doesn't have Titiksha. What happens? There are all these ups and downs. It leads to reactions in the mind. It leads to all these disturbances in the mind. And such a mind cannot be available for study and contemplation. Our final aim in all of these qualifications is to connect them to Shravanam, Mananam, and Didhyasanam, because that has now become an important pursuit in my life. And therefore, one tries to cultivate these values. And if one cultivates these values, one conserves. Example with Titiksha, one conserves one's mental energy instead of it going into complaining, lamenting, calling up people, talking about this, talking about that. One silently goes through it, and such a mind becomes more available for study and contemplation. So with this, I'll conclude here, and the remaining qualifications we'll take up in the next class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Any
Yes, sir.
questions or comments?
Yeah,
Okay.
can I?
Sure. Vishwanathan.
Vishwanathan.
Yes.
The very important topic being discussed today, and on the gaining of the inner wealth, on the spiritual process or spiritual growth. My first question is, okay, Shravanam, Mananam, Nidithyasanam, which you said to, attain the Mano Nigraha, but putting into practice on our daily life, how to go about it, I'm not clear based on whatever we have discussed. Okay, these are all important, practice what you said. That is the first question. Second one is, you said that every human being or adhikari in this context, we face choice and choiceless situation. Is it only applicable to adhikari or it's also to the guru? I'm not clear on that. If you can answer that, that will be great.
Yes. Yes. So basically, there's this question about practice. Right? Now, we had touched upon this a little earlier, that all practice in Vedanta, when it comes to the question of practice means doing something, right? Practice means there is some action involved, karma involved. So all question of doing, karma, practice, all of this is required in order to gain the qualifications.
Yeah.
So question of practice arises when it comes to gaining the qualifications. And with a mind that has gained these qualifications or is committed to gaining these qualifications, one comes to Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. So Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam are in some ways not the primary means for gaining the qualifications. The primary means for gaining the qualifications is Karma Yoga. And that topic we'll come to next. In fact, really speaking, after one has gained these qualifications to some extent, we say that the Shravanam also helps gain the qualifications further. Because the Shravanam makes the subject matter clearer and clearer. And as the subject matter becomes clearer also, that contributes to the increase of these qualifications because one becomes more committed to the pursuit.
Yeah.
So Shravanam also has a role to play in that. But before one comes to Shravanam, one has to be an adhikari with at least some qualifications. And how do those qualifications come? We said it comes through practice. And what is this practice? It is basically Karma Yoga. And we will discuss this topic when it comes to the Karma Yoga topic. We'll talk about it in more detail. But basically, once one comes to Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam, it is not karma anymore. It becomes Jnana Pradhana. Karma Yoga is Karma Pradhana. There is action involved, practice involved. But in Jnana Yoga, per se, there is no karma involved. It is purely Jnanam. So that is the first point. Now, when it comes to choiceless situations, the choiceless situations apply to every creature in this world. Whether it be, an animal or a human being or even the guru, it comes to everybody. Basically, a choiceless situation is something where you have no remedy and you have to go through it. So it definitely applies to even a non-adhikari. Let's talk about, the CEO of a worldly company, for example, who is running a business. Even such a person may say that this quarter I have to incur so much loss. Then he will ask his executives that is there any way I can convert this profit and this loss into a profit this quarter? The executives go back and they examine, they talk to their teams and they come back that we have analyzed the situation and in this quarter we have to take this loss. So even such a person examines if there are remedies possible. If there are no remedies possible, he says we have to take a loss and the company reports a loss, for example. So this is an example of a choiceless situation purely in worldly circumstances. Even an adhikari can have such situations. There may be a person is committed to the pursuit of Vedanta, but he is not yet a jnani, he is an adhikari. And there are difficult situations like a sickness one has to go through, right? Now, if the sickness has a remedy, he can seek that remedy. He can go to a doctor. It's not that an adhikari stops going to a doctor. The adhikari can go to a doctor and seek a remedy, and whatever medicine the doctor gives, he takes it. But through that process, he tries to employ this titiksha. Because why? Because he says that agama pai, it's coming and going. But there may be a choiceless situation in which there is no remedy possible also. In that case, what can you do? One has to withstand it. One has to garner the strength and withstand it. And that strength can come from two sources, right? It can either purely be some amount of mental strength, which is what an adhikari has to garner. But a jnani has an additional resource, which is the jnanam. The jnanam itself gives immense strength. Why? Because the jnani not only has developed titiksha as an adhikari, jnani has titiksha because he was also an adhikari at one point. He went through this, he cultivated titiksha. But now he has the additional thing called jnanam. So irrespective of the situation, he is able to see himself as being purna. So this is again something that is applicable to everybody, to an adhikari, to a jnani, to a purely worldly person.
Yeah. Last question, connected question before Srinivas comes into connected question only. The involuntary thoughts which comes out of your vasanas.
Yes.
Everybody is having this. I don't know how to go about in. See, one is for the worldly things, you need to have involuntary thoughts to protect yourself from security and other means. But in case of spiritual growth, this has to be get rid of. That's what you have discussed in the class. So how to get rid of this? Again, Shravanam, Mananam only, or a different route is applicable here?
See, the ultimate way to handle this is jnana.
Okay.
Without jnanam, right, the vasanas will always be there. The vasanas have been accumulated over millions of lifetimes. In fact, anadi kala. So we don't really know what the next vasana that may decide to sprout is. Nobody knows. There are certain likes and dislikes that one has, where one can detect that there is a tendency of the mind to get attracted to something that one can be aware of. And karma yoga is largely meant to neutralize these likes and dislikes. But vasanas can be anadi. Even a jnani's mind will have vasanas. There's nothing. Yes, because of the mind is anatma. All the jnani realizes the mind is not atma, the mind is anatma. Therefore, even if this vasana arises in a jnani's mind, it creates a certain fancy, but then it dies off.
Okay.
Because a jnani sees I'm full and complete. Why do I have to pursue this? It makes no sense at all.
No,
See,
you gave an example.
The vasana is not able to take control of the jnani's mind. But in ajnani's mind, the vasana can cause issues.
Yeah. Now you gave an example of the coffee and newspaper.
Yes.
So suppose if the thought comes to me, can I straight away ignore and proceed without undergoing this coffee? Is one way of doing that practice, or how does it? That's a question.
See, that was yes. In that example, see, it was a vasana that has been cultivated over 45 years by this person by doing the sadhana of the newspaper and coffee.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easily gotten rid of unless he now starts to do an opposite sadhana of abstinence from that coffee and newspaper.
Yeah.
It is possible. Yeah. It is possible to overcome that, but one has to have a certain commitment to it. And then over a period of, there may be some withdrawal symptoms over then or 25 days or whatever. But beyond that, one can overcome it.
Yeah.
So yes, it is certainly possible to overcome some of these habits.
Yeah.
But others may require more effort.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Over to Srinivas. Thank you.
Okay. So I can see Balaji, your raised hand here. Do you have any comment or question?
Yeah, I have a question. With regards to Shama, you said japa is one of the ways we can do a sadhana to gain, control on Shama. And the biggest problem I face is that during that sadhana, during the japam itself, my mind keeps wandering, and I'm aware of that constantly, but I'm never focusing on the japam. That's the problem I've been facing. It's almost like autopilot. Mechanically it happens, and my mind keeps wandering, and again I keep bringing it back, and it just, that's how things keep going on.
Yes. So basically, there is another text called Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sara Sangraha. So that talks about Shamaha. And it says that Shamaha has got these two angas, two organs, so to say. Or you can say that there are two contributing causes that lead to Shamaha. And it talks about one being Vairagyam and the other being Dama. Basically, if the mind has a certain attraction for a particular object, the mind sees some value in a particular object, the mind will dwell upon it. That's the nature of the mind. So then one has to see the doshas of the object. The vivekaha produces vairagyam. So one has to have the dosha drishti, see that this line of thinking, this line of this object is incapable of giving me what I really want. So as one develops vairagya through vivekaha, as one develops vairagya, that leads to an increase of shamaha, because these kinds of involuntary thoughts automatically tend to come down. And the other is avoiding contact with some problematic parts of the world that lead to these sticky kind of thought patterns that have nothing to do with what my real goal is. So that also contributes to the rise of shamaha. So japaha is in some ways more of a sadhana that that helps me, makes me aware of how much wandering my mind is. But that too certainly helps. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grishyate. That abhyasa is required, and vairagya is also required. The transition doesn't, one cannot expect an immediate transition. It takes a prolonged period of time. But then there is no absolute shamaha. As we said, that there is no absolute control of the mind, and we don't need it also. We need a certain relative control of the mind. The mind has to be relatively available to me to proceed with Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. Ultimately, the Jnanam is the final remedy for this.
And this, see when I'm doing some work or anything else, I'm able to focus, concentrate, and my mind doesn't waver.
Yes.
But this problem is occurring mainly while doing japam. That's when it's as if I'm sitting idle and my mind is wandering. That means I'm not focusing on the japam. Like somehow that anchoring is not there in what I'm doing in japam.
Sure. Yes. And I think it's a very good thing that, when you are able to focus on some other thing, if the mind is available, that means that there is an ability to set aside the involuntary thoughts, right? And if, as long as the mind is available during Shravanam, then there is not something that one should worry about too much. Because Swamiji says, Pujya Swamiji says that Shamaha is availability of mind. That is all it is. When you want it to be available, is it available? During Shravanam, is it available? If it is available, then we don't have to worry too much about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Satyanji.
Sure.
You gave a beautiful analogy about the house, how the owner wants to come back to the house, and there is a tenant who
Yes.
refuses to vacate because there is
Right.
no mind space and it is
Right.
occupied by involuntary thoughts.
Right.
So that was a very beautiful analogy to dwell upon. And how you thought to increase the voluntary thoughts, then the japa is the sadhana that one needs to practice. So it was very nice. And also you said how in a chess player, he's so focused. There is no involuntary thoughts. He's only on the further four moves as he's playing chess. So there are two beautiful analogies that one needs to reflect upon. And thank you so much for the availability of the mind, the space. So
Right.
thank you, beautiful. It is very practical. Thank you so much, Satyan.
Sure. Thanks, Sharada.
Thank you.
We
we can
so
close.
we'll conclude.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice.
Hari Om. Hari Om, Shruti.